Damon Mercadante is the Vice President of Programmatic Marketing for Streaming Services at ViacomCBS. So Damon, thanks for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? And I understand you also may have a video clip for us to share as well.
Sure. Damon Mercadante, ViacomCBS, VP Programmatic Marketing for the streaming services, Paramount Plus in particular. My background's really been in sort of growth marketing, brand marketing, business operations, monetization. I've worked at big companies like eBay, ViacomCBS, but also startups in the e-commerce space and ad arbitrage business. So pretty good mix of background and looking forward to the conversation today.
Great.
And, just to give everybody a little background on sort of Paramount Plus, it's a rebrand of CBS All Access. And it was a combination of CBS content and really the addition of Viacom content. So just a quick clip, just a note on our originals. Let's see.
Paramount Plus is a mountain of original, bingeable entertainment. This is chilling, unsettling, and brilliant bonkers. This is a peak TV experience. Originals and exclusives on Paramount Plus. Now streaming.
Cool. That work?
Very cool. Yes, thank you. Thanks. So, first question I have for you, Damon. Your business is a little bit unique in that you're already operating in large parts in a cookieless environment with televisions and things like that. So maybe could you tell us a little bit about how you're already, working outside of third-party cookies and so forth, and how you go about collecting and managing first-party data in that type of context?
Sure. I think what's important for us is thinking about the customer journey. So we look at, building our brand across TV, web, mobile, and we want to present a unique environment and try to identify those users and personalize it for them. Mm-hmm. So if you think about that, we start with, big efforts in connected TV space. So indeed, we are unique in the fact that we are a streaming service. So, a number of years ago, we had to think about what is life without the in a cookieless world. For example, we knew that cookies would get deleted. It's multiple people on the same computer. There's cross-device challenges, but looking in the connected TV space, where you're looking at an IP measurement path, we had to think about what can we do with solutions that are out there that don't require first-party data. But given the fact that we do have significant first-party data, how do we leverage that? So, just sort of starting with what is out there today. So in the connected TV space, we're leveraging, whether it's PMP, Open Exchange, just targeting good content, vertical content, such as entertainment, sports, news. But what we're also doing today, and just in the last year, which I think is pretty cool, is looking at some of the TV manufacturers and what are they doing to help us identify what's going on in the connected TV space. So, testing out some solutions with companies like Samsung Ads, Roku, LG is coming out with a similar product. And then, looking at things like the Amazon DSP and what they're doing with their Prime Video offering and how that can help benefit us. So out there in the connected TV space, we're leveraging, in a sense, walled gardens within the connected TV world. In addition, when you look at the sort of web and mobile, the walled gardens already have tons of data, whether it's search, vertical content, affinity groups. So we're leveraging that and thinking about how do we personalize our message and our ads to those users and really build our brand that way. But then when you really look at, I guess, the power of ViacomCBS, it's, what can we do with our first party data? Can we collect data and utilize that? And so what we've done, historically, we've been able to get emails. That's one of the best ways to identify users. And whether it was CBS Sports or CBS News, for example, their March Madness pool or their fantasy football league, or they wanted to log in and watch a particular news brand, that was a way for us to collect emails. So if you take that across all of our CBS and Viacom brands, we really make an effort to develop a relationship with the user and collect information in a privacy forward way but then allow us to supplement what's in those walled gardens with our own first party data. So in particular, Paramount Plus, we need to register a user, we get their email, and we are able to build solutions with partners like LiveRamp or Kachava to help us combine our data with some of the data in the walled garden world. So that's what we're doing today, and I can get into more detail if you like, but that's really the high level of what we're doing right now.
Great. So you mentioned partners a couple of times, and we've heard that, in other venues as well, the importance of partners in kind of this cookieless world, right? So maybe you could shed some light on that. You talked about Samsung and other partners. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. I think, and not just for our offering in the connected TV space, but a number of brand advertisers out there, for example, are doing big brand campaigns on TV, right? So with some of these solutions within the manufacturer space in their own DSP world, you can evaluate with ACR technology, who might have seen a particular ad on a cable show or linear TV. And if you're looking at reach and frequency, you can leverage their technology to target users who perhaps haven't seen your brand campaign at that point through linear TV. Likewise, as everybody knows, there are a number of people who are just ultimately looking at streaming services alone, and maybe they're not seeing any ads on linear TV. So it's a great way to reach that audience in particular, in addition to people who see ads via linear. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned again there, you mentioned a couple of times, being privacy forward. We've talked to a lot of people about the effectiveness even of third-party cookies. It already started to decline anyways. And a lot of that is because, consumer awareness, and you mentioned deleting cookies and people not wanting to be tracked across different websites. But you mentioned privacy a couple of times. So maybe talk about the importance of how privacy plays a role in understanding the unique identity of each of your consumers or potential customers, and how that factors into how you go about what you're doing.
Sure. And I think that, if you just look at it from your own consumer perspective, I'm challenged by mobile apps. Let's just say there's a mobile app that I'd never use, but it's tracking me across my entire phone. So I recognize the value of giving people the option to opt out of these different apps, letting them track them when they're not using them. Obviously, at ViacomCBS, we have a very large legal and privacy team, so we need to make sure that we are following all the rules in the market. One of the things that we try to do is look at a partner like, for example, maybe LiveRamp might be a good example, where we're taking our emails that we have, we're putting them into a safe environment. LiveRamp then communicates with some of the publisher partners to help identify users in an aggregate manner that's not identifying their personal data. So that might be a good example of a partner that can communicate to other organizations like Google, for example, to help us seed our data into their targeting solutions.
Great. And Sai earlier mentioned zero-party data and having consumers, opt in explicitly and say, yes, I want to hear more about this. I want you to communicate with me based on, in our context, belonging in a particular group, teachers, students, and so forth.
Sure.
I know we work with CBS Interactive, and so maybe how important is that in terms of the identity piece of your consumers and the groups that they belong to, and really getting to understand. It feels like there's in this new world, there's probably maybe less overall data than in a third-party cookie world, but the data you do have perhaps is a lot more accurate, a lot more valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'll give you two examples, and SheerID kind of falls right into this space. So during the pandemic, it was great for our business in some ways because people were at home and streaming more shows, and at one level that was great. But personally, my wife's a physician, so she was sort of a frontline, very, very high stress environment. And there were some programs that wanted to help support some of the frontline workers. And SheerID was a solution that she could actually go onto a different website and get some offerings. And it was pretty crazy that you guys had set this up so that they knew that she was a physician. So just from a personal note, I thought it was really cool. From a business perspective, it's great for CBS, for Paramount Plus, because we offer a discount for students. And I think at the end of the last presentation, it was noted that, another streaming service does something very similar. And I think that's extraordinary because you guys are pulling that data in real time in the cloud, which allows us to have accurate information, because we want to make sure that the right people are getting that offer and encouraging them to test out our service and help facilitate the experience.
Yeah, it's funny. Again, we've heard from a lot of folks, that synthesizing the data down to really what's important, so you can talk to people, in a way that they want to hear information. In when you have a lot of data, like in that third-party cookie world, often the analysis becomes the work itself versus figuring out how best to target and talk to folks. So let me just take a quick programming note. I do want to tell folks, if you've got questions, you can drop them into the Q&A, and Damon and I will see them there, and we'll be happy to take any questions that anybody has. We'll probably spend the last 5 or 10 minutes or so focused just on those questions.
Yeah, one of the things that I sort of forgot to mention was we are building our own models within our own data, right? So with our first party data, we're building our own propensity models, we're building our own attribution models. And as you highlighted just now, it's like there's so much data out there. So how can you make it more efficient in some ways, but also not get buried in the data? And so what we're trying to do is, leverage our data science team to come up with models that help us figure out, what's the right personalized message for a particular user, whether it's a content genre or, a regional based offering. So for example, on an NFL, right, if you're in a particular NFL city during the season, we're going to show you some unique content that we wouldn't show someone else. Or you're in the, SEC Southeast, might see something different as well, in particular on the day. So we're trying to identify and personalize our message as a marketer, but then also, from an identity perspective, what we're trying to do is harness and collect data to help the user experience. So for example, we might want to, within a family, maybe one person is interested in, sports, another person might be interested in entertainment, and someone else might be interested in kids content. So we can identify those users if they're willing to let us do that, and then they can have a personalized message there and personalized offering and recommendation of content. So I think that's important from a understanding identity. And then also building lists. So a person could build a list of shows that might be something they'd like to look at down the road, or so we're trying to do both personalization at the brand level when they see ads, but also personalization within the product, so that their experience is well received.
Yeah, and I think, it sounds like also there's an opportunity to do some analysis on that data to see, what trends you can pull out in terms of, do students or teachers or medical professionals, first responders, are there commonalities that you can see across those groups as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you look at us from an entertainment perspective, we one of our big shows coming out is called Mayor of Kingstown, which is a sort of created by the creator of Yellowstone, right? So we understand certain demographics may be more interested in that show, and they may have some connections to the military, for example. We know that that's a big audience for that genre. So that might be something where we try to provide a unique offering to that user base to bring them in. But to your point on students, I think that's great, because in this streaming space, it's really that young audience who, for better or worse, don't watch cable. And I say that as a member of ViacomCBS, where cable is really important to us across the board, but we also want to engage consumers based on their habits. And I do think that younger student audience, we need a way to communicate effectively with them. So I think SheerID relationship is outstanding.
Great, great. Let's look at a couple of the questions that have come in. One that caught my eye. How do you determine where to spend time on emerging technologies? And I'll even expand that a little bit, just in terms of, how important is it to be kind of consistently evaluating and looking at different new technologies that might be out there?
I think anybody who's been in this space knows that the industry changes on a yearly basis, if not every 6 months. One or two challenges that we have is that, one, you need to be cutting edge. So yes, indeed, you have to be looking at the latest and greatest technology. You have to anticipate where the market's going. You have to anticipate things like the cookieless world, right? But truly, I think we've all been anticipating this for a few years now. The challenge is, once you decide to partner with a particular vendor, that you need to give that vendor some time and optimize and build that relationship. And it's kind of hard to switch from one vendor to the next. So obviously you're not going to lock yourself in for a lifetime with a vendor, but you also can't work with 3 vendors in the same exact space who do almost the exact same thing. So that's just my personal opinion, but I don't think I'm alone.
Right. That makes sense. And then, how do you see media partnerships, especially in TV, evolving over the next year or two?
That's sort of a broad question, but
yeah,
maybe you could. I'll just give you an example of how we obviously leverage our relationship with TV, which is ViacomCBS. We obviously have tons of CBS channels, Viacom channels. We're leveraging our learnings and first party, not just data, but sort of analysis on how do we communicate to those consumers. So if it's a Comedy Central user versus a BET consumer versus CBS Sports, or a RuPaul, for example, a reality show like MTV, Real World. So we're trying to bring all that data together from the TV world. We obviously do lots of branding, not just within our own ViacomCBS properties, but we buy throughout the cable world to let people know about our brand. So I don't think it's going to change that much. But we might just also be unique because we're part of that organization.
Right. Now I'll take some liberty here, and I'll put a couple of questions that came across together and try my best to ask it in a way that makes sense here. There's obviously a ton of competition in the media space, particularly with new and upcoming channels, TikToks of the world and so forth. Plus just competing with, different demographics with esports and online gaming and so forth. How does that impact, clearly brands in terms of where they have to look and choose to put marketing dollars and advertising dollars and things like that? How do you constantly kind of react and adapt in a world where, you could have a huge competitor 6 months from now that you don't quite even know about today, right? So it's a pretty constantly evolving space. How do you look at that? Is it all about staying focused on the content? How do you approach that environment?
Sure. I mean, obviously the streaming service in and of itself is a rapidly growing category, and there's lots of players in the space. So obviously we want to provide content solutions to consumers, which would draw them in. But I think the bigger question is, you as an advertiser, you have many levers and opportunities to market to consumers, whether it's TV, a classic web, and sort of modern social solutions like TikTok. So we approach it as, given the consumer and the environment that they're in, how do we actually communicate with them effectively? Now, we're lucky from a connected TV space that we have great content that is on a TV screen. And I think, if you have the capability to create video, high quality video, whether you're selling as an e-commerce provider or a content solution, that it's a great way to get their attention. And from a cost perspective, a number of digital channels out there on the programmatic side allow you to do that. So you can target audiences at a pretty cost-effective way. And I think it's hard to undersell the value of brand when it's shown on a TV. And I think there was a quote from someone that said 50% of all connected TV is bought programmatically. So even a smaller organization can buy TV if they can create the video. To the bigger question maybe is, TikTok or something like that. Again, it's what's the environment of the user and how to communicate with them. So one of the things that we do is we build content for TikTok. For example, if you go to TikTok and you look at, I think, Paramount Plus, you'll see what is being viewed the most. And for example, one example was SpongeBob, and we were able to, they did some videos of the people's voices, like who are the real people behind the voices of SpongeBob. And that was a big draw. And then iCarly, which is a new show that just came out, had a historical audience in that sort of 20s demographic, and just getting the opportunity to communicate our message to that audience for iCarly was a big success. So I think you have to provide the right content. YouTube, for example, video clips, sort of show clips do well. So even though they're video, you might have something that works well on TV, a different type of video that works well on YouTube, and then an even different sort of truly different video that might work on TikTok.
Yeah, so it's really about, and you I think even mentioned this in your opening comments. I mean, it's really about the user experience and the customer journey, right? It's about meeting them where they are in kind of an omni-channel world, right? Like wherever they are at any given time, which might be different over the course of a day or certainly a week. So it sounds like, I guess I was coming at this question initially more from a competitive or a change management perspective, but it also sounds like this is an exciting time in media in the sense that it's really unleashing a lot of creativity, right? Along the lines of you mentioned the SpongeBob thing, which was pretty cool. I'm already thinking to myself, I'd like to see that. So it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity to unleash some creativity in the space as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're an optimist, if you're in the entertainment industry, I think you're truly excited about streaming, right? So it's a way to communicate and try out new shows. Obviously, content is very, very expensive to create. I think as an organization, we've had history of building great content, but it's an exciting space because for better or worse, people are at home trying to search for content and entertainment, and they want not just one size fits all, but something unique to their own personality. So it gives everybody an opportunity to provide the content that they think that they can do well to an audience that they think would value it. And hopefully people can find that whether it's streaming or online. But I think it's an exciting space if you're in the entertainment world right now.
For sure. So another question that just came across, and this similar to what I was going to kind of ask you as a wrap-up question, which is I was going to ask what your predictions are, whether it's for ViacomCBS or streaming or media, in general. What do you see coming that we haven't talked about in the next year or two? But also, one of our attendees asked, do you predict a lot of integrations similar to Yahoo Shops and others, shoppable sites and ads, shoppable articles, TV? We notice a lot of shoppable solutions without shoppers needing to leave the site. So maybe we could talk about that. Do you see that? And then just in general, what kind of predictions or trends do you see coming about in the next year or two?
Sure. I mean, that's an interesting one if you look at the e-commerce space. And we even have some e-commerce products for some of the kids' consumer products on Nickelodeon, which I'm not too involved with, but we care about it. But what I found interesting in that space is really and I can't remember the name of the company, but what they're doing is when you get to that transaction that, you no longer really have to, it's not just save my credit card, but it's everything that's already included. Square, I think if you go to a restaurant, they might have my phone number. And so I give them my phone number and it collects the credit card, it has everything in place. So it's just a one click, but you put in your phone number, submit essentially at the restaurant. And I know there are a couple, at least one other company, I forget the name of it, that's doing that online with e-commerce, so that they're recognizing you, your identity across their different network. And so it really helps you, reduce the complexity of just completing that transaction online. So I think, seamlessly simplifying the transaction process will be something that we see more and more. To your other question, sorry, I got excited about that one.
No, that's cool. The other question was then just to, take that to the next level. Just, what else do you see out there that we haven't talked about that you're really excited about, coming down the pike?
Yeah, and sorry, and part of that question was maybe like QR codes on the connected TV. And so, is there a way to, even for a streaming service, at the end of the ad or the clip that, one can automatically, show their scan it with their phone and go and convert. So I see that as continuing on. I think from a long-term perspective, global is pretty interesting with regard to how do we think about consumers who might be in different countries, yet they want to see US content and vice versa. So for example, for us, UEFA soccer, we have a lot of, United States individuals who are interested, but a lot of international or sort of expats from Europe who are in the US are trying to watch those games. So I think the continued overlap across global countries, there's a lot of activity into Brazil. And even we're starting to do soccer in Brazil, but, as you think about fintech companies and, one of the big fintech companies is coming out of Brazil. I think we're going to continue to see that. And, the internet world allows people to just come together more easily, and you don't have those barriers like you used to.
Speaking of barriers, one thing that struck me when you just said that, sometimes technology outpaces, government decision-making, right? And so I know we've seen in other industries, whether it's Uber breaking into new markets and turning regulatory, regimes upside down because, there was no specific, laws or regulations in place to help govern them. Is that, what are some of those, do those things exist as obstacles, as you look to go global? I mean, how does all of that work? How do you serve up, US content to somebody in Europe? Can you just do it, or is it a bigger task than that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we follow all the rules and regulations, and if someone's in Europe and they're not supposed to see a particular show, then we do not allow them to log in from Europe to see a US show. Let's be very clear about that. I think my point was more that as people are traveling and intercrossing between countries, that they might be in the US but be interested in European content that might be showing in the US. To your bigger question of complexity of how aggressive companies can be about their business models and fine line between legal and illegal, I think every organization is going to take their own approach. We as a larger organization need to be much more careful. I mentioned one, which was just mobile apps early on, that they track you across your phone, even though you're not using the app in particular. That seems like it should or could have been regulated at some point. You mentioned Uber, can they track you, not just, what you're doing to get a ride, but as they track you throughout your city, and maybe at one time had plans to, and maybe they still do, building an ad network around all the data that they're collecting on you, traveling through your city, and whether that's appropriate or not, or is that an extension of what their service is? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So I think every organization is going to have to make their own decisions on that. And then, as an advertiser, you need to decide, how comfortable you feel leveraging some of the tools that are out there. And, as an advertiser, you can choose not to use those solutions. And sometimes that says a lot about the brand or not.
Right. So kind of on that note, as and last question as we wrap up, I mean, it sounds like I like to think I'm an optimist, like you said as well. And so I look at it, as we move beyond third-party cookies, most of the folks that we talk to, like yourself, had already really started to move beyond that because there's opportunities, outside of just that kind of approach, that are many and already being taken advantage of. And so is it fair to say, in your perspective, I mean, as we move past third-party cookies and into a cookieless world, that there's probably not any reason for concern or panic? It's just a natural evolution of kind of where we're all going. Is that fair from your perspective?
Yeah, it's natural evolution. I also think there's always going to be some other technology solution to help people get as close to the information as they can without stepping across the line. And in some ways, it may help us in that we're not so inundated with data, and that maybe it helps make the opportunities more clear and make our decisions more effective. So as an optimist, I'm not worried about a cookieless world. As a person in the technology space, I think we're going to have unique inventions and business models which help us, communicate with consumers, help us present, in our case, entertainment to consumers. And to your point of fast forward, we still haven't gotten back into the world of a non-COVID world. And, when people are back on their buses, what kind of content are they watching on their phone? So, I think that's going to be a big difference in the next couple of years, which is, how do you make sure you have the right content that is, engaging people when they're in different environments outside of their home.
Right. Great. Well, Damon, thank you. This was a fantastic conversation. Good luck to your Steelers this fall. Hopefully we'll see what happens when they play the Patriots, but I appreciate your time here. I'm going to ask Lauren if you're still there, if you could take it back away or give us a quick time check if you could.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you, Damon. Appreciate it. Okay, great. Is Shivanku on?